In this episode of PassFCE, an overview of the writing paper. What do you have to write? How much time do you have? How many words do you have to write? How can you prepare for the writing? We'll answer all these questions and more in this episode of PassFCE. Hello and welcome to PassFCE, a Mansion Inglés podcast specifically created to help you pass the Cambridge First Certificate in English exam. I'm Craig. I'm a teacher at the British Council in Valencia, Spain. I'm a Cambridge oral examiner with over 20 years of teaching experience. You can learn English with us free at mansioningles.com, and you can take your English to the next level with our audio podcasts at inglespodcast.com. So, here's a question for you. How many parts are there in the writing? And how long do you have? How much time? Actually, that's two questions, but do you know? Well, there are two parts to the writing, part 1 and part 2, and you have 1 hour and 20 minutes to answer both questions. Part 1 of the writing is compulsory. You have to do it. And you must write an essay, the focus of which is on various things, agreeing or disagreeing with something, maybe giving information, giving your opinion, giving reasons for things, sometimes comparing and contrasting ideas and opinions, and at the end, drawing a conclusion. There's only one question in part 1, and you must do it. You should write between 140 and 190 words. Here's an example of a part 1 question. In your English class, you have been talking about work, and your teacher has asked you to write an essay. Write an essay on the subject of work and use all the following notes. Give reasons for your point of view. Is it better to earn a lot of money or enjoy your job? So that's the question, that's the essay question, and that should also be your title of your essay. So write the question as the title of your essay. In this case, is it better to earn a lot of money or enjoy your job? And you have some notes. It says, write about 1, how much time is spent at work, 2, the type of work which is done, and 3, your own ideas. So there's a space for you to think of an extra idea number 3, and you must include these 3 ideas in your essay. So the first idea, how much time is spent at work? Well, the more you enjoy your job, the quicker time passes. But many people only work so they can earn money to enjoy themselves in their free time. Many people only work so they can earn money to support their family. So those are some ideas you could use in your first note. The second note, the type of work which is done, well, some jobs are more enjoyable than others. You could speak about that. Should we choose a job for the salary, for the money, or should we choose a job for job satisfaction? That's another thing you could speak about. And then note 3, you have to think of an idea. Well, does money bring happiness? If we enjoy what we do, will the money come anyway? If you have a family to support, can you really look for enjoyment? If we're not happy with our jobs, should we change jobs? So make some notes before you start. Write ideas, write questions, at the beginning, just 4 or 5 minutes before you start writing your essay. Just brainstorm, just vomit ideas onto the page and write notes to help you think of things to write about. We will be focusing on the essay and on the other writing choices in future episodes of PassFCE, and we will be helping you prepare for this part of the exam. But let's move on to part 2. Now, in part 2, you have a choice of 3 questions, and you must answer only one question. Now, the choices could be one of the following, maybe an article, an informal or a formal email or letter, a report, or a review. Again, in part 2, you should write between 140 and 190 words, so that's easy to remember. You need to write the same amount of words for each part of the exam, between 140 and 190. So when you practice writing at home or in class, count the number of words and see what 140, 190 words looks like on the page for you. How long is it? How much is it for your style of handwriting? Is it 1 page? Is it a page and a half? Is it perhaps 3/4 of a page? So obviously, it depends on the size of your handwriting, how big your handwriting is. But if you know what 140 to 190 words looks like for you, you don't need to waste time counting words during the exam. You can use the time to check for your mistakes after, and then check again, and you have more time for that. If you write 130 words or 200 words, it's okay. But don't make your writing too short and don't make your writing too long. Another thing to remember is not to write your essay, email, article or report, etc. twice. Don't rewrite it. Don't write it cleaner. It's a huge waste of time. If you make a mistake, just cross out, correct your mistake and continue writing. And if you make those notes at the beginning for 5 minutes, you have a good idea of the content of your writing. If you finish early, which you may do, you see you have 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the end, use this time to check your grammar, check your punctuation, check your spelling, etc. And try to find any common errors, any common mistakes that you typically make when you write, and correct them. This is a much more useful way of using your time than rewriting the same thing again and copying it. It's important to write in an appropriate style. For example, the style of a report is not the same as the style of an article. The style of a formal letter is not the same as an informal letter. We will be looking at the different styles you need to know in future episodes of PassFCE. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and you can read the show notes at inglespodcast.com. Actually, it's a pretty full transcription of everything I say. Remember to read the question carefully at the beginning and underline or highlight important instructions. I read so many writings from my students in which they just haven't answered the question correctly or they've forgotten to include the notes. If you highlight important key words and if you write some notes before you start, you're much more likely to focus on answering the question. Decide what you're going to include in each paragraph and write some quick notes so that you don't forget. In part 1, expand the notes in the question. Use the 2 prompts or 2 ideas that are given in the question and think of one more idea of your own. Don't misspell words that are on the question paper. If you have a word in the notes, make sure you copy the spelling. Really, there's no excuse for making spelling mistakes with words that are already written in the question. Remember that dictionaries, mobile phones, electronic devices, etc. are not allowed in the exam. So practice writing before the exam without that help of a dictionary or the internet. Remember to write clearly and leave a line between paragraphs. Look, I know it's 2015 and we all write with a keyboard and a computer and most things are now digital, but in the exam you'll have to use a pen. So practice now, practice your handwriting, make sure it's clear, make sure it's easy to read. If you know your handwriting is bad, you must practice it and try to make it as clear and as easy to read as possible. The examiner who reads your writing will not waste time thinking, what's this word? I wonder what this candidate is trying to say here. No, he or she will just give you 0 if your writing is difficult or impossible to read. And leave an empty line between paragraphs. This makes your writing look attractive on the page. It makes it look much cleaner and easier for the examiner to read. It's much more accessible. Use a variety of vocabulary and a variety of grammar. Even if you're unsure, you're not exactly sure of the correct grammar or maybe correct spelling, it's okay to try some difficult grammar, even if you make a small mistake. At FCE level, the examiner is looking for FCE grammar and FCE vocabulary. If you write something like, the film is good, I like the film, we saw the film Monday, it's a good film, it's not exactly FCE level grammar, and you will lose marks. So use a variety of linking words to connect your ideas so that your writing is logical and easy to understand. So let's look a little at the different task types that you can expect in the writing part of the FCE exam. So I said before, part 1 is an essay. An essay is always written for the teacher. When you write your essay, answer the question by writing about both the content points in the notes and providing your content point, an extra idea of your own. Your essay should be well organized. It should have an introduction and an appropriate conclusion. And it should be written in a suitable style and register. An article is usually written for an English language magazine or a newsletter, and the person reading is assumed to have similar interests to the writer. So, for example, if the article is about sports, we assume the person reading is a sports fan, for example. The main purpose of an article is to interest and engage the reader. So you should include some opinion or comment. Just think of articles you have read in magazines and blogs that you're interested in. An article has an interesting heading and a strong introduction or first paragraph. This is to get the reader engaged. So if you see an interesting title, you're likely to keep reading. If the first paragraph is powerful and you engage with it, it interests you, there's a good chance you will continue reading the rest of the article. If not, you'll stop and you'll look for a different article. Now, an email or a letter is written in response to the situation in the question. So the letters and the emails in the writing paper will require a response which is appropriate or similar in register and tone for the target reader. For example, you can expect to be asked to write letters or emails to an English-speaking friend or a colleague at work, perhaps a potential employer, a college principal, or an editor of a magazine, that kind of thing. Now, a report is usually written for a superior. For example, a teacher or a boss, or a peer group, perhaps, maybe members of an English club. And you are expected to give some factual information and make some suggestions or recommendations. A report should be clearly organised, and you may have some headings in your report if it's appropriate. A review is another choice, and that's usually written for an English language magazine, a newspaper, or a website perhaps. The main purpose of the review is to describe and express your personal opinion about something which you have experienced. For example, a film that you've seen, a holiday you've had, a product you've bought and used, maybe a website that you're familiar with. So you're giving the reader a clear impression of what the thing discussed is like. So you need to be able to describe and explain here. Description and explanation are key functions for this task of the review. And a review will normally include a recommendation, your recommendation to the reader at the end. It could be positive, it could be a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation, depending on your opinion of the thing you are reviewing. Okay, as I said before, this episode is an overview to give you a general idea of the writing paper. In future episodes, we will be looking very closely at each part of the writing and studying the different styles and question types. You can find detailed explanations and practice exercises of the writing and other parts of the FCE exam in our FCE course Mention First. If you go to mentioningles.com, you can find our CD available on our product page. And we also have this available for digital download, as well as the physical CD. I'll also have a link to this course in our show notes at inglespodcast.com. In our next episode, we have some speaking practice with two students, Ada and Marta. If you have any questions about this episode or any part of the FCE exam, send me an email to craig@inglespodcast.com. Or you can record a voice message on our website at inglespodcast.com. Just connect your microphone and click the orange button. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back very soon with another episode of PassFCE. Remember, you can learn English free at mentioningles.com and take your English to the next level with our free audio podcasts at inglespodcast.com.
Footstep step 2.